In the Rasmussen Theater of the National Museum of the American Indian, the stage is set with 7 chairs facing an audience, a screen with slides at the back of the stage, a podium at the left. An indigenous white woman with light skin and long, straight, dark hair approaches the podium. A sign language interpreter sits below the podium.
Hello, and welcome to the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. First, we gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral lands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. My name is Anya Montiel, and I am the curator for the museum's digital exhibition, Ancestors Know Who We Are.
Slide, logo, National Museum of the American Indian, Smithsonian, on-screen text. Artist panel featuring Joelle Joyner, Moira Pernambuco, Paige Pettibon, Monica Rickard-Bolter, and Stormy Weber, moderated by Amber Starks, with introductions by exhibit curator Anya Montiel.
This exhibition moves beyond the idea of the Native experience or the Black experience to highlight how gender and mixed-race identity informs art and creative expression. The exhibit also centers the art of 6 Black Indigenous women artists who live across the country and represent Indigenous nations from the Arctic to South America. We gather here in Washington, D.C., and in the live stream realm for a moderated discussion with 5 of the artists from the exhibition. The exhibition's 6th artist, Rosalind Brown, passed away during the planning of the exhibition.
Photo of a Black Indigenous woman in her 50s with brown skin, her long, dark, curly hair up in a ponytail. Rosalind Brown, 1960 to 2020.
We wish to honor her here. On stage, we have placed a chair for Rosalind, marked by a shawl, because her spirit is with us today as we have this wonderful artist discussion. Rosalind was a citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. She was an award-winning basket maker specializing in honeysuckle and reed baskets.
Photo of a small basket purse with short looped handles woven in tan and blue-gray. Lace Moxie's Purse, 2014, Root Runners, Flat Reed, Dye, Hide, NMAI 27/0589.
In 2014, she won first place in basketry at the Cherokee National Holiday Art Exhibition and Judge's Choice at the Cherokee Art Market. She exhibited throughout Cherokee Country and Oklahoma. Rosalind also founded the nonprofit organization Project A, which served the community of Muskogee County through arts therapy, gardening, job training, and programs for youth and elders. The Cherokee Heritage Center curator, Callie Chunstudi, said of Rosalind, "She was a pillar of strength and inspiration for justice and equality, a powerful woman I was lucky to have met through art. She fought for the underdogs, the underprivileged, and the mistreated. She made beautiful Cherokee baskets and was always a joy to be around." We send our blessings to Rosalind Brown's children, relatives, and community. Next, I would like to welcome Amber Starks, the moderator for the discussion, who will introduce the remaining artists. Thank you.
Amber, a Black Indigenous woman in her 30s with dark skin and dark, thick locks of hair, approaches the podium.
Hesche, Amber Chehochefkados, Muskogogi Does, Momen Lushti Does, Amalegida Lojapoga, Amatowa Lojagoga. Hi everyone, my name is Amber Starks. I am Muskogee, and I'm also very much a proud Black woman. My tribal town is Lojapoga, or the place where turtles dwell, and my clan is the Turtle Clan. And I am so very honored to be here. I have the pleasure of not only moderating, but being in conversation with wonderful artists who I know online, but for the first time, many of them I'm getting to meet in person. And it's just such an honor to share this space, especially as someone who really cares about Black and Native identity and the intersection of Black and Native identity. I think we get a chance to share with you not only our art, but our lives and the intersection of our identities and how that's important to not only the work we do, but just our general lives, the lives that we lead. So I'm really excited to introduce and also be in conversation with these lovely artists. And I think that you're gonna have a very enjoyable time today and learn a lot about their artwork, and then just them as people. So the first artist I'd like to introduce you to is Joelle Joyner.
Joelle, a Black Indigenous woman in her 20s with brown skin and long, straight, dark hair, approaches the podium.
Chillin, Joelle Joyner Giathe. Hello, my name is Joelle Joyner, and I descend from the Meherrin Indian Nation of North Carolina. And I am 22 years old. This is my first museum exhibit, and I want to thank everyone for coming, and thank you to the National Museum of the American Indian for featuring my artwork.
Image of a poster featuring two brown-skinned young women with linked arms. The woman on the left has long, dark braids, wears a colorful ribbon skirt, and holds a smudged stick of sage. The woman on the right has thick, dark hair and wears a gold necklace in the shape of Africa. Text above them reads, "We stand together." The background is yellow surrounding their bodies, with a divided black and red background beyond that.
I am a digital artist, and I started out making posters in 2020, and this was my first poster for the Yahoo Indigenous Collective. This is
Drawing of two Native women holding hands and standing in a hazy Impressionist style field with a white imprint of a bear print in the sky above them.
another poster celebrating my Meherrin heritage, featuring two Bear Clan women, which I descend from, in traditional Meherrin regalia. The first piece featured in the exhibit is a painting of my great-grandmother, Iris Pierce Joyner.
Painting of the torso and head of an older brown-skinned woman with a halo of gold above white hair. The fuzzy-edged outline of her body blends into the dark night sky background that is dark blue on the right and red on the left with smudged white dots throughout. Iris 2020.
Painted in 2020. As a digital artist, many want to understand what makes digital art different from traditional, and I want to say it is not that different, but it gives more accessible mediums for those who do not have access to traditional art medium.
Screenshots of the digital art process. On the left, a brush library drop-down menu shows a variety of brush strokes and a digital painting in process. On the right, an almost complete realistic portrait.
The second piece featured in the exhibit is called Marigold, and a picture of my friend Cristiana Castillo, a poet from Detroit.
The finished portrait, Marigold 2020. The woman with a marigold flower in her hair holds her hand under her chin. Impressionist-style trees and sky in the background.
Thank you.
The next artist I'd love to introduce you to is Moira Pernambuco.
Moira, a Black Indigenous woman in her 50s with brown skin and short, dark, curly hair, approaches the podium.
Welcome. Welcome. My name is Moira Pernambuco. I am from British Guyana. There are 3 Guyanas. One is Dutch, one is French, and one is British. Okay, I'm from British Guyana. I'm Wapishana Indian. In my country, we refer to ourselves as Amerindian. Okay, my mom is of African descent. My pop is Wapishana and Portuguese Brazil. Go Brazil, you know, in the football. I'm a little bleary-eyed because I was watching football into the wee hours. Before I even speak about my work, I just, again, wish to thank each of you for coming out today. And I wish to call on my ancestors. On my mom's side, her name is Drusilla. We call her Granny King. She's passed on. She's of African and European descent, varietal. On my pop's side, her name is Granny Magdalene Pernambuco. And her husband, his name was Joseph Pernambuco. So I wish to call and honor them. And I wish to honor my parents, Dionisio Pernambuco, and my mom, Lynette Pernambuco. These are not tears of sadness. I came here for the first time to this museum and seeing Native people and being a Native artist and an African artist and where we intersect. It's just beautiful. We have a lot to learn about one another. Aside from my blood ancestors, I wish to call on James Baldwin. Some of you know who James Baldwin is. If not, look him up. And Langston Hughes. One of his, I'm paraphrasing, one of his words, some of his words that struck me is in a poem, Still Here. We've gone through so much. Look up that poem, Still Here, by Langston Hughes. And I'm still standing. I'm still standing to be here. And Nina Simone, who was, God rest her soul. Some of you know who she is. If not, look it up. I'm not here to teach. I'm just here to like welcome us. And so we can be in this space and honor one another. And honor one another, how different we are and how similar we are, right? In a lot of ways, My Auntie Joan, who is my mom's eldest sister, she sponsors us. She sponsors us from Guyana. And without her, I wouldn't be here. So I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors. I stand on the shoulders of my parents and my siblings. I stand on the shoulders to be here, okay? And Robert Nesta Marley. Some of you know him as Bob Marley. That's the first time I identified as a person of color in Guyana. Anyhow, my work speaks for itself.
A color photograph of a light-skinned black man standing with a solemn expression, bare-chested, arms behind his back. Daniel, 2017, photograph. Canon 7D body, manual lens, Voigtlander, 28 millimeter.
What I'm presenting here is called Black Boy Beautiful, Black Boy Vulnerable. And it was way before George Floyd, Rodney King. I've been doing this work for a long while. So I hope that you can, continue to look at my work and maybe find.
Black and white photograph of a light-skinned black man lying on his back on a simple, single bed with white sheets. A white cinder block wall and ladder in the background. He has his knees up and his arms crossed over his forehead, wearing only white briefs. Troy, 1995, black and white photograph. Mamiya, 6x7 medium format camera.
Find something where you can connect with us. And so again, I'm so privileged to be here as a woman of African descent and a woman who is indigenous. In my country, we say Amerindian. So thank you so much, and again, welcome.
Our next artist is the lovely Paige Pettibon.
Paige, a black indigenous white woman in her 30s with light skin and long, straight, dark hair, steps up to the podium. She wears a colorful beaded necklace.
Hello, I'm Paige Pettibon. I'm Black, I'm Salish, and I'm white. My tribe is Bitterroot Salish from the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. We were placed on the Flathead Reservation in Montana. And I'm from Tacoma, Washington, and I am honored to be a working artist, a full-time artist. It is something that sustains me, and I recognize it as a privilege.
Black and white realistic portrait painting of a light-skinned Native woman sitting in a chair, a Black man sitting next to her on the arm of the chair, and their baby in her arms. Rhoda, Richard, and baby Richard, 2019, acrylic on canvas.
So when approached for this exhibit, I had just finished this painting, and this painting is of my grandparents and my Uncle Richard. I wanted to show something that is in honor of my family and shows the intersectionality of my cultures. Where I come from, we introduce not only ourselves, but we introduce our parents, our grandparents, and we welcome our ancestors into the space. And I felt like this was a perfect painting to introduce everyone to my work and my grandparents and to me as an artist. So I painted this, and it's based off of a picture, and a family member found the original picture in a stack of photos, and she shared with me just a few months ago that the writing that was on the back of this picture. And it was written from my grandmother, Rhoda. She wrote, "This one was taken when Junior was 11 days old. We had just been home 3 days when Richard's first sergeant came out to our house. There was a house full of people and no one told me my slip was showing, exclamation mark. Junior was yawning. Love to mother from Richard and Rhoda and Richard Jr." So I hope that just that little snippet is able to show you the humor my grandmother had. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed away when I was very young, but with 10 kids and over 20 great-grandchildren, I feel like their presence lives on through us, and I'm happy to be a part of this large family that is so diverse in cultures, and we just are so talented as well, and we have a lot of artists in different mediums, and I'm just so happy that my work is here at the Smithsonian. It's a big accomplishment, and I feel like it's great that I'm able to welcome my family into this space as well.
Portrait of a brown-skinned, brown-eyed child on a reddish-brown background, hair pulled back in braids and wearing a denim button-up shirt. Soren Lake, 2021, acrylic on canvas.
This is the second piece that I have in the exhibit. So the first piece is something that welcomes my family and shows our history and part of my past. And this picture is of Soren Lake, who is a friend's son, and I feel like his portrait is a sign of our future, thinking about where we are in the future as Afro-Indigenous folks. And he's Black and Hickory Apache, and he's already a strong leader. He has interests in carrying on our cultures. Even though he's a Southwest native, he, is learning Coast Salish culture, and I think it's really beautiful that we're able to find a commonality amongst our tribes and be able to welcome each other and carry on these traditions and find ourselves and our identity. Even though I'm Bitterroot Salish from Montana, being welcomed on the Puyallup lands and learning the songs and language has helped me just reconnect with my own Indigenous roots. And so I think like this work is really important, and I'm happy that I have 2 pieces of beautiful artwork to share in this exhibit that really represent where I'm at with that journey. Thank you.
Our next artist is Monica Rickard Bolter.
Okay.
Monica, a Black Indigenous white woman in her 30s, with brown skin and long, wavy dark hair, approaches the podium.
I'm the shortest one here, so hope you can see me. Hi, I'm Monica Rickard Bolter. I am Black, Prairie Band Potawatomi, and German. And I come from a very long line of storytellers, and both of my parents are one of 7 siblings, so not everybody could be here, but I'm really happy for the ones that are. Hi, Dad. So this is just such a privilege and honor to be here with so many amazing Afro-Indigenous women, and just being able to hear their stories and, you know, very similar experiences, but also very different. So.
A drawing in white charcoal on black paper. A profile portrait of a young Black woman, braids piled in a bun on her head. She wears sunglasses, large round earrings, a necklace, and a spaghetti strap patterned tank top. Renee 2, 2016, white charcoal, 18 inches by 24 inches.
I wanted to start off with this one. So everybody is actually seeing me in a very interesting transition where I'm like, I turned away from art and finally came back. So this is one of my pieces where I was really happy when I was like, no, I'm gonna actually pursue my art. And this is of my little cousin, Alexis, but I call her Renee. And one thing that was so inspiring, like she's 7 years younger than me, and she made a conscious decision. Like if you know anything about Black women hair, and if there's a perm, like, and you want to go natural, you got to cut it off. So she did that at a very young age, at 18, when she's just starting college, and I thought that was just the coolest thing. She was like, I really want to have that natural hair and that natural look. So as you can see, it has grown. She has beautiful locks, and this was right before I started getting into color. So I really like charcoal, and I like working off dark paper and really bringing out the highlights as opposed to just focusing on the shadows. So that's my process. And then I switched over to dry pastels. And Kitehawa Dreaming is in reference to Jean-Baptiste Pointe de Sable, who was the first non-Indigenous person to kind of help cultivate the area of Chicago, and he fell in love with a Potawatomi woman, and I just love their story. That I'm sure that people were, you know, they're not always excited to see mixed couples, especially in the 1700s. So I thought that was just the coolest story, and the more I hear, the more I'm like, oh yes, they had such a vision for what, how prosperous that area could be, and harmonious, and you know, just a good vision for the future. So I'd like to bring in some of the Potawatomi imagery in the background there, while still remaining true to my style with portraitures.
Drawing of a turtle surrounded by other swimming animals, as well as flowers and bubbles. Mashinke Mense, Turtle Island, 2021, dry pastels and digital composition, 110 inches by 167 and 7/16 inches. Permanent installation at the Field Museum of Natural History.
And this one, Mishiki Mensi. So I am still learning my traditional language, so I don't always get it right. But I'm trying to incorporate a lot of the Potawatomi language in the titles of my pieces. And this one is at the Field Museum. So Native Truths just opened earlier this year in May. And this is part of the entrance that leads from the Northwest Coast. And if you know anything about Turtle Island, or basically a flood story, and kind of getting into just how the animals were trying to see whether or not this flood was going to go away. And it took Muskrat was the only one who actually made it to the bottom, but offered hope. But then he did die, but he brought back a clump of earth, and Turtle put it on its back and expanded out to the North America continent. So that's my interpretation of Turtle Island. And yes, there was one day all I did was just draw bubbles, and it was wonderful. So this is all hand-drawn. I actually developed a whole new process where I hand draw it, scan it in, and then digitally compose it in Photoshop. So you're gonna start seeing more of that, especially with my stuff.
Digital drawing on black paper, white outlines of two mermaid-shaped women facing each other on a colorful psychedelic background.
And this one I recently did for an online auction, and this is my call out for the missing and murdered Indigenous women and how similar those stories are and how women need to share those stories. As somebody who has survived some pretty terrible domestic abuse, it speaks to me. So I want to make sure that you're not defined by it. You know, you are your own person and you can do whatever you want and be that strong person and just keep moving on and moving forward. So thank you for having me here, and look forward to hearing from the rest of the panelists.
And our final artist is Stormy Weber.
Okay, I gotta move this a little bit.
Stormy, a black Indigenous woman in her 60s with brown skin and a cedar straw fedora hat, steps up to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, all right. Okay. Thank you for your patience with me. Here we go. Okay, my name is Stormy Weber, and I'm a black Sugpiaq two-spirit lesbian interdisciplinary artist. I work with poetry, installation, archives, both personal and public, collaboration, and performance. Firstly, I give respect to the Piscataway ancestors and relatives of this land, and I thank my own ancestors for making my way to this place. Kuyana to Anya Montiel, visionary curator of this exhibition, and to the Native Museum of the American Indian. It is such a profound honor to be here. I'm also so grateful to this inspiring circle of black Native women artists, including the late Rosalind Brown, Joelle Joyner, Moira Pernambuco, Paige Pettibon, and Monica Rickard-Bolter. And I thank you all for being here today, and thank you to everyone who may be watching.
Stormy runs quickly through a series of slides. A title piece for the show, Ancestors Know Who We Are, printed on paper. A photo of Stormy speaking at another podium with a historical print of a slave ship behind her. A triptych of a black and white photos of Stormy's maternal grandmother, a light-skinned Native woman. A black and white portrait of Stormy's father, a black man in a Navy uniform. A black and white photo of Stormy's paternal grandmother, a black woman standing next to a tree.
My work means to create conversations about ancestry, survivance, the lives of mothers, two spirits, trauma, and healing. My Sugpiaq grandmother was from Seldovia, Alaska. My father's people were from Marshall, Texas, a former Confederate capital, and the territory of the Caddo Nation. My maternal grandmother was my first teacher. She was an artist herself. She could not practice professionally at that time. When I asked her why she identified herself as white on my mother's birth certificate, she said, "Honey, in them days, it wasn't good to be Indian." She was a singer who would match Billie Holiday note for note late into the evenings. One of these mornings, you're gonna rise up singing. You go on to spread your wings, and you'll take to the sky. Until that morning, child, nothing can harm you. Hush, little baby, don't you cry. She had a gift for laughter, for making the most modest something extraordinary. She had a laugh that could lift your heart from the ground. She feared nothing at all.
Black and white photo of Stormy's mother, a light-skinned indigenous white woman. Photo with text reading, "All my daddies were butches." Flyer for an exhibition, text, Stormy Weber, Casino, a palimpsest.
My mother, with her fierceness, also gave me a piece of her hard-head determination. She took me to pre-Stonewall gay bars with her when I was a child. Those were my first artist residencies. I watched and I listened, and those stories became Casino, a palimpsest. I tell you this to say that my work is full with crossroads and crossing over places, with disaster and divinity, with the making up of spiritual saving graces from the what was left after colonialism and chattel slavery.
Close-up photo of Stormy's art. A tiny pair of moccasins tied to the interior of a kayak with a colorful patterned cloth inside. View of the kayak installation in a gallery space. Photo of exhibit curator walking down a hall. Another exhibition photo.
Of all the many contradictions and joy found in Black, Indigenous, Two-Spirit, queer, poor, lesbian, matriarchal states of being. The images you see are recent work. There are many from Casino, a palimpsest, my solo exhibition at the Frye Art Museum in Seattle. My curator was the brilliant Miranda Belardi Lewis. Other images are from the Field Museum in Chicago, the Native Voices, Our Stories, Our Truths, curated by the wonderful Deborah Yepa Pepan. Other images,
The cover of the artist's book, Blues Divine, with a black and white shadowy photograph of the artist wearing a hat, suit with tie, fake mustache, and smoking a cigar, along with the text, Blues Divine, Stormy Weber. Artwork image featuring the black outlines of a group of school children. Photo of the artist in a performance. Photo of the artist alone in an empty room.
My chapbook of poetry and archival photos, published by River She, Blues Divine, Queer Arts Fest, and several other projects. Art met me as salvation, shield, and buckler, because the life was not easy. Music was my balm, and I wore out my mother's records, and I read as much as I could. I know this is a circular telling, but it matches my journey. My family, both Alaskan Natives and Black Texans, survived more than I can contemplate. My practice centers on restoring their stories and honoring their lives. And I will close with a quote from the review in Art in America of the show Casino, a Palimpsest. Min Wen wrote, "Rather than erect divisions between personal art and historical archives, Casino considered the intangible properties by which art and poetry are connected to family, ancestry, language, and public memory, revealing intergenerational underground histories of resilience." I thank you so much.
So now I have the pleasure of having a conversation with the lovely panelists. I'm hoping that this will be more of a discussion that you all will get to just preview, but it's going to be us talking about the work that all the lovely artists do, and just, like I said, our lives and how being Black and Native is important in everything that we do. So I want to welcome all of the artists onto the stage, and we'll have a little conversation.
The moderator and artists sit on the stage in the order from left to right. Joelle, Monica, Paige, Amber, Moira, Stormy, and the empty chair for Rosalind. On-screen text. Moderator, Amber Starks. Artists, Joelle Joyner, Moira Pernambuco, Paige Pettibon, Monica Rickard-Bolter, and Stormy Weber.
Okay, so I thought it would be nice for us to just talk about not only your work, but what it means to be Black and Native, Afro-Indigenous, or however you identify. I think that there aren't always spaces for us to exist, to show up fully as Black and Native people. And so it is such an honor to have this space where we just get to exist and get to celebrate not only ourselves, but the ancestors, like many of you spoke to, the ancestors that we get to bring with us who not always had the choice to have agency or speak to their lives, their hopes and their dreams. And so I'm hoping that with this conversation, not only we get a chance to speak, but the ancestors that are in us get a chance to speak. How does that sound?
Great.
All right, so the first question I have of you all is, what does it mean to be a Black and Native person and a Black and Native artist? Who'd like to go first?
Something about a
Everybody looks at
question,
you.
isn't it? Oh my goodness, of course I know.
Let's be clear, the first part of the question is being Black and Native, and then Black and Native artists?
Yes, and
Okay.
it could be the same thing for you, but maybe it's something that you differentiate, so.
I'm still learning how to be Black. I'm still learning how to be indigenous Amerindian, because in my culture, and in particular my father's culture, it's an oral, there isn't a written language, you know? So, and then coming here at the young age of 10 years of age, I didn't know I was coming here, but my parents brought us here for a better life. So I understand the immigrant, this is, you know, so I'm still learning to be, and it's still to be, I say African, of African descent, and Amerindian. And I hope at some point I can learn. I'm learning. And so, again, yesterday was my first time here, and I was so overwhelmed to see this beautiful, the artistry, our history, and how, however we came through that, it's now here. You know, so I'm still learning. Yes.
Yeah, and I want to acknowledge that not everyone identifies as Black and Native or Afro-Indigenous, and that's okay. Like, however we choose to identify, I want to honor that. I think, you know, some of the language around like being both of African descent and of indigenous heritage sometimes can pigeonhole us into these identities that maybe we quite don't feel like we fit into. And so I would just want to acknowledge that so many of us have different ways of identifying. Some of that could be generational, some of that could just be cultural, and some of it's just personal, right? So I often tell people, my grandmother, who is also Black and Native, she will just say she's Creek or she's Indian, but that doesn't erase her identity as both. So I want to acknowledge not all of us like fit into those categories that are often ascribed onto our bodies and those boundaries that are put onto our bodies. So I totally acknowledge what you mean. Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else want to answer that question? What does it mean to be either of African descent or Black? And
Well,
also,
one thing I find interesting is that there is such a thing as a Black Indian, but there's not such a thing as a white Indian in common parlance, right? But there are actually a whole lot of white Indians, and my mother's family are white Indians. So I just call that forward, that we have a difference right there that is interesting to think about. Why is that there? And I guess for me, like, I used to think of the burdens of it. I used to think, oh God, I got the Trail of Tears on one shoulder, I got the Middle Passage on the other shoulder. You know, when I was being dramatic, right? Because sometimes you're just dramatic for no reason, just to have fun, right? Oh my God. But in fact, how powerful is that? That we come from people that were strong enough to survive these tremendous hardships, to survive and continue and go forth. How powerful is that? And that both peoples have a tremendous spiritual and cultural richness, and that both peoples came to this country and were in this country and found one another through time. And that we've actually always been here. The father of the blues was Charlie Patton, who's Black Cherokee. You know, Jimi Hendrix is Black Cherokee. So, and the fact is, you know, if you judge mixed people, or you say you don't belong, we can't go backwards through that bloodline and untangle it. This is it. This is what we got.
Oh, yeah. Oh. But I don't know if my mic works, but it was reminding me saying like how the struggles, but I remember talking to Amber on Instagram saying how even though they had like genocide, slavery, and like pain, that they're able to still find love, still build families, still make connections even through all the struggle. they were still able to find happiness, even if it was just a little bit.
I think about the ways in which our ancestors chose each other in spite of, all the things they went through. And not just our ancestors, but our parents, And then also how we choose one another, right? How we see one another. And so in spite of all of the hardship, I think about the ways in which we chose to love one another, chose to see each other's humanity when we were dehumanized. And so that's a really beautiful thing. And I think that we are the personification of all that like joy and that resistance and even that pain and that struggle. Like we exist because people chose one another. And I think that's just so beautiful.
That's so powerful.
Absolutely, and it's the humanity of us, how we connect. This is what I'm getting back to. We might look, this is our vessel, but this is our soul, this is our heart, and we connect. And so I wish to offer that to us. It's the humanity of us, and let's try to engender that.
Yeah.
I like what Audre Lorde said as well. She said there's no single issue struggle because we don't lead single issue lives. And I think those of us who may, have multiple experiences of marginalization, we have what we've learned to share. We have what we've learned and how we've learned to survive that to share with the larger communities. And it's helpful.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I really love about all of your art is that you're choosing to show up fully as Black or Native or African and Native. It's like you're choosing to exist whole and fully and share that with the world. And I think that that's so important because oftentimes we've been forced to like pick sides, and I think even today a lot of us find even in Indian country where people will, ascribe these ideas of who you are and what you should be, but I think your art kind of defies that, right? It refuses that. It decides like, this is who I am, this is who I get to be, these are the things that are important to me, and so I celebrate that.
I think, as you can see, all of us look different, right? And we have a commonality that we share. And our experiences as Black and Indigenous are going to be different regionally as well. But I don't know, being in the waiting room with y'all, it's like being around family. And I think as an artist, it wasn't until I embraced my cultures and my family and who I am as a person that I felt the truest and most authentic to who I am and the most proudest of my work. And it's being reflected in how people respond to it as well. They see themselves in my work and they have reached out to me and saying how important it is. I want my child to see this, my child's Black and such tribe, and it means so much to me that you're doing this, like keep up the good work. And sometimes, well, especially since COVID's happened, I've felt like I'm making art in a vacuum, and I'm like really drawing on my ancestors, like, what do I need to do? Like, where do I need to look for inspiration? I can't go outside. I can't put myself in a dangerous situation and risk my health. And, there's places to go. There's people that I can contact and reach out to with Zoom and their self-study and finding, these photos that I painted and reconnecting with who I am. And I was putting a lot of myself out in the community, and I didn't realize that I needed to take that step back. And I took this opportunity to take that step back. And I wasn't a full-time artist until COVID happened. And now that I am, it's like, right? All of us have
Something good came out of that.
Us people, we know how to adapt, and we know how to, make us sad. We sing in times of atrocity sometimes to get us through it. And I'm such a strong empath too, and I have to block not just the sickness that was going on, but the political issues. It was just so heavy, and it took a lot out of me. And I found a lot of healing in this work, and I made connections with folks where I can make art for our children, and I have another sense of healing my inner child that didn't grow up with my culture or seeing myself represented. And so as an artist, I identify mostly as an artist, but I feel like my influences of my Black and Salish culture, and also being someone who lives on Coast Salish lands, on the Puyallup tribal lands, it is a responsibility that I definitely appreciate, that I've been trusted to represent my community in this way. So, you know, it's being responsible. It's reconnecting with your culture, because the systems really try to take the Indian out of us. And there's this interesting dichotomy of being mixed race, and people, they're like, okay, I can get you're Black and white, but then you're also Salish, you're Native too, like, oh my gosh, I only understand two binaries. This is interesting.
It's too much.
It's too much.
But the wonderful thing about humans, we can learn. We can learn.
Yeah.
We can learn, and to be it is to see it. And so we're representing for the next generation, which I didn't have. You know, I'm learning.
Yeah.
You know, and so we can learn.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of humans.
Yes, and I agree with you on that human aspect too. It's like, it's not just this identity of race, no, it's our culture, and all humans have a culture.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we're not totally tragic. We
No.
dance, we sing.
No.
Absolutely.
So
We're
and
not.
that's important to you know, this part of being human, humanity,
Exactly.
you know? Yeah.
So that leads me into the question then, how has your art helped you to navigate a world that often erases, dismisses, and even marginalizes Black or Afro-descendant peoples, Indigenous peoples, and then also Afro-Indigenous or Black and Native peoples? How has your art helped you to navigate this very sometimes cruel and violent world?
So I would say, because I actually have an animation background, and it wasn't the best time to be at school. It was a commercial arts school, and you were really taught, don't put yourself into this. It's all about the client. And I couldn't help but notice, I was like, there's nothing here for Black and brown people. Like, I want to be able to talk about my Native side, and if I'm doing this, like, the hell am I doing this for?
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that that representation was there. So I also write as well for Native News Online and First American Art Magazine, and I really wanted to make sure that people recognize that that representation does really matter. And working with kids, and I also did this children's book with Alyssa London and Preston Singletary, Journey of the Freckled Indian, and it's all about blood quantum and how do you walk that line. It's like, I want to be like just you, but also be like, I want to honor my heritage and everything, and be like, it's okay to embrace all of it.
Yes.
And it doesn't always have to necessarily be at the forefront. Like, I'm wearing my ribbon skirt because I know my auntie's gonna fuss at me if I don't. She's like, I made you that turtle skirt, you better wear it. So I was like, okay, I did that. But I mean, I love embracing just the funny and the humor and like the illustrations and stuff. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be like, this is clearly a Black Native woman did this. Like, it's okay. So walking that line has been very difficult, but in Chicago, I also started a nonprofit Center for Native Futures that is started with all mixed race Native folks that live in Chicago, and we were so sick of seeing people leave and go off and have more opportunities in the Southwest and everything. So we're like, no, Midwest has some amazing artists. We want to bring back people who were pushed away and ignore those political borders. It's like, no, this has always been Native land, and take pride in that. So always come back. So find us.
May I add to that? The Artist and the Racial Mountain. It's an essay by Langston Hughes. By now you probably know. And it's like what you said. Can we just be artists? Do we have to? Because the work I'm presenting here, that's not the only work I do. I also photograph white folk. I do street photography. Let me be an artist. Let me have my space to create.
Yeah.
It does not have to be colorized. And it's okay if it is colorized. And so to that point, in my line of work, I'm a photographer, and this is how it's affected me in the schools, which has been mostly white schools in photography. So these two units, they command lights, flashes. And so one is called the master, and one is called the slave. So in my, because the master is for the main light, and then the slave can trigger other lights. So I've asked in my practice in university, can we like rethink this? Because it's personal.
And the slave is black.
Hello. Hello. Yes, this is my point.
Yeah.
And so my professors are like, that's what it is. Canon makes it, Nikon makes it, and that's all it is. And I don't agree with that. So that's how it affects me, but I question. And so I am the other because I'm a troublemaker.
Aren't we always? When we refuse our
That's why
oppression,
we're
aren't
here.
we always
That's why
the
we're here.
troublemaker? Well, some trouble is good trouble, right?
Yeah.
We make good trouble. Does anyone else want to speak to that question? I have a couple other really good ones, so we can move on.
All right, yeah.
So I'm curious, what role does art, and it could be anyone's art, it could be your art, or the artist play in Black and Native futurity? Like when we're thinking about, you know, a lot of times the Indian, the Native, is thought of in past tense, right? Even I think a lot of times when we look at Native art, people are thinking of Natives past tense. And I want to think about us not only in the past, but in the present and also the future, because I often say, like, we have our ancestors and our descendants in us. Yeah. So we're showing up all the time as past, present, and future. So I'm curious, what role does art and artists play in building a Black and, thinking about Black and Native futurity?
So when I was thinking about I did a land acknowledgement piece for a company, and they were like, we want to show like this is Anishinaabe land. And I was like, I didn't want to do like something from like the 1800s because everyone knows like, oh yeah, the Indian Wars, the buckskin, the fringe. And I'm like, I want to do something that like, Anishinaabe people are still in Michigan, they're still alive. So I wanted to do like contemporary piece, like, and like, see, like surprised, like it's so colorful. They're used to the browns and the bed, they're like wearing jingle dress. They're wearing, like beautiful beadwork, because it's like, it's not just in the past. It's not just, I'm killing buffalo. Sometimes you're just like eating Cheetos. It's just like, Cheetos. Yeah, it's like this concept of like time immemorial. Yeah. It's like, yes, we were back then, but we're also going to be in the future. So the sky in the back of the picture is all colors, meaning it's not morning, it's not night, it's going to be forever. So as long as we're here, our ancestors are here, and our descendants will always be here too. So, yeah.
And that we have the right to be dynamic, right? I think, like you said, oftentimes people will think of Native people in these kind of stereotypical paintings, like stuck in the past, and we have Natives who are DJs, right? We have Natives who are, who do a plethora of things. And even our cultures, like we are adding to the cultures of our ancestors, and it's okay for us to be dynamic in that way. We have permission to exist in the future, right? And so I just want to celebrate, yeah, we can eat Cheetos too and still be Native.
I really think our art is, I feel like from my practice, it's healing backwards and forwards. Yes. Because art is medicine, So looking back to what our ancestors endured and looking back to how that marked our journey and dreaming forward to the future that we want, So it feels as though it's a constant process. And it's, it's a really interesting time with all of the debates around identity and blood quantum to be talking about this, to be stepping forward and saying, we're Black natives, we have tribes like the Lumbee tribe, that was forced to and other tribes to forced to hide their black ancestry, the Melungeons, you know, because of the anti-black racism. So this right here is part of a transformation. This right here is part of a movement. And my hope is that this will make way for more and more young people to come forward and for, you know, to feel included and not judged, because lateral violence is real. And lateral violence is a poison that where we replicate the abuse of our sister because she's near to us, the abuse that we witnessed by the overculture.
Yes, and I oftentimes hear, you know, in these conversations around blood quantum and identity is that there's a certain kind of Native that is the right kind of Native, like you're authentically Native. But I want to remind folks that if you're Native, whether you're traditional, whether you're non-traditional, whether you're spiritual, whether you're religious, right? Whether you're Black and Native, multiracial, all of that is Native. If you're urban versus res Native, all of that is Nativeness. And so, and I think that we get to celebrate that up here, so yes. So I have two questions that I'm hoping to get in before we have to wrap things up. The first question I have of all of you is, what was it like to be invited to participate in this exhibit? I mean, if you're like me, you're blown away that, you know, we're at the Smithsonian as, you know, Afro-descendant and indigenous people getting to celebrate, you know, this, you know, our heritages and our cultures and the work that we do. So what was it like to be asked to participate, and what made you say yes?
Well, for me, it was so thrilling because the words "ancestors know who we are," those are my words. Yep. And I did an interview in 2016 with Indian Country Today about being a two-spirit Black Native artist. And as I was talking with the reporter, Mr. D.A. Navoti is his name, really lovely person, and you know, I was just reflecting, because the way I grew up in, you know, gay community of the 1960s, which was centered around the bars. I've always been on the outside of things. And so I never fit anywhere. And so I've always spent my life you're not a girl, you're a boy, you're not a woman, you're a man, you're not Black, you're not. And my ancestors just said, come here, we know who you are. Ancestors know who you are. And that lifted such a burden from me. And I'm so happy to share that which they told me, because that's the truth. If your ancestors know who you are, you have nothing to worry about, because they're holding you, they're lifting you, they're carrying you, and they will defend you. So don't worry. So I was just stunned and speechless and just so incredibly honored. Nicole Oxendine brought me here, my publisher there, and she brought me to NMAI, and I wept when I came in this museum. I just wept. I couldn't even go all the way through the museum, you know, because my grandmother came from Alaska in the 20s with her father, and she went through all of the struggles, yeah. And to see suddenly this, and to feel all the ancestors here, it is just such a grace, such a blessing. I'm so thankful.
I was scared. And I was scared. My sister, not my blood sister, but from grad school, I will be remiss if I do not mention her. Okay? America Meredith. She saw me, and she referred me to Anya. And Anya, thank you for your hard work. This is amazing what you've done, Anya.
And for putting up with us.
I'm putting up with their shenanigans. But yeah, I was scared, but I stepped into faith. And I said yes when I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I said yes, even though I was scared. And sometimes that's how things shift.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been saying yes to a lot of scary things, and it's rewarding and it's terrifying. And I feel like once I overcome that next step, I feel like a sense of pride, like I'm doing this not just for myself, but for my family too. And I mean, a little bit for myself too. There's that healing that I feel like Stormy was talking about, like living in a place where you don't feel like you belong. And I'm like carving out this way for myself.
It was very scary. It was very scary, but it was also very cool. And Yeah, my husband was even mentioning recently, he was like, I remember you coming out of the room and be like, so I just got an interesting phone call, and they invited me to participate. And it was just, it's such an honor. Like, I remember listening to my Aunt May growing up and just all the different stories she had to tell and thinking, like, this really sucks that nobody else can hear this. And how do we try to preserve some of these stories? And the fact that I was actually able to do Mother's Uplifting that kind of talked about just how, mamas, they are always looking out and trying to be there for you and just really keep you going. So I love all of my aunties and my grandma and my mama. I'm doing this for them.
I was surprised. I was like, me? My studies are in public health, so my work was mostly like healthcare, and I did art, like as a connection, because, working at an urban Indian clinic, it was like, that was a way that we connected with people through art, and it was just like, you want to do a poster? And I said, yeah. And then now I'm here, and I'm like, what happened? But I just feel like so honored because I've been told by people, like, like when those scary things happen, that's just like your ancestors pushing you forward, and I'm still like, why am I here? But I'm so grateful at the same time, and I'm just honored and still scared.
Yeah, I think all of us, it sounds like we all had that comment, like, oh gosh. But so we don't have very much time. I feel like I could have this conversation with all of you for the rest of the day. I think that we have so much to share and so much ways that we connect with one another that we could go on. I do want to know, how can people find you? Because I know you guys all are working on some projects, and I would love to make sure that before you leave, that the audience knows how they can find you, follow your work, and hear about the upcoming projects that you have. So online, websites, where can people find you?
Well, before I close, I'd like to thank everyone who has supported this work and supported this process. Special thanks to Tori Trujillo, healer and medicine woman and vocalist, who has helped so much in preparing for this event. I have a website and a link tree where I list my work, but you can reach me through my website, stormyweber.com. And I have a book currently, Blues Divine, which is paired with an audio with a CD. We have to update that because we're losing our CD players, right? But it's nice still to have an object. Thanks, everything keeps moving so quickly. I'm very excited to say that I have something coming up where I'm going to have some work go back to Alaska. So I'm really excited about that. And also to have a sabbatical in 2023 to continue to grow and develop the work. Because my biggest dream is just to continue to do more. I think we should really, as artists, let's aim to allow ourselves the capacity and the support that we need in order to go further with the work. So, but this is a true blessing. Thank you.
For me, Moira Pernambuco. Google, there are not many Moiras, not many Pernambucos. So Moira Pernambuco, you'll see all sorts of things. But before I finish, again, thank you, Anya, and thank you to the staff here at the Smithsonian. It's been just incredible how you've shown up for us. Yeah, so anyhow, Moira Pernambuco, that's how you can find me.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming here today, and those of you who just kind of stumbled in here and was like, ooh, a nice little surprise. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. PaigePettibon.com. Like I'm the only Paige Pettibon out there, so you can find me there. I do pretty well on Instagram with I make jewelry as well, which is channeling my grandma. So it's our ancestors know who we are. And I have a ton of projects. Like my mind's still kind of jet lagged, just thinking about all the things that I have to do when I get back home. I'm so just a lot of stuff. I'm based in the Tacoma, Seattle area. So, if you go there, there's some of my work at the Stonington Gallery. and a couple galleries in there at Sacred Circle Gallery. I think some of us are in there. But yeah, I try to update and put what I'm working on out there. So you can find a lot of it on my website.
Monica, and I want to please also thank Nicole Oxendine, who brought me first to the museum, the National Museum of the American Indian, got me started here. Thank you.
Oh yeah, the How Collective as well.
Yes, the How Collective.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah,
Many of
Asia
us are-
Tail, like
There's so many
she's
people to
really
thank.
supporting us.
Yes, Chimagwech so much. We really appreciate all the hard work, Anya. Wonderful, wonderful, again. You can find me at monicarickardbolter.com. I also write under the pen name White Pigeon. That's my family's last name. I'm based in Chicago. You can also find us on centerfornativefutures.com and see, or org, excuse me. They're going to cap me for that. And yeah, we'll be at Expo next year for this international art exhibition. So yeah, come on out.
I need to make a website.
You're on Instagram.
But yeah, I think you can just Google Joelle Joyner. Hopefully something appears.
She's on Instagram, everyone.
Yeah, I haven't posted much, so I will look out in the future. Okay, I will make a website.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with that, I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you
It's
so
been
much,
such an
Amber.
honor to
Thank you,
share
everyone.
this space with you guys. I dream about a future where Black and Native folks are thriving the way we are on stage, and so this is just a small snippet of the future that we will absolutely have, because we are worthy of more than oppression, more than subjugation, more than all of these things, right? So I just want to celebrate you all and say I see you, and thank you so much, Mado, for having me here and letting me be a part of this beautiful
Thank you,
conversation.
Amber.
And
You're
I'm going to give
wonderful.
a standing up for Anya, who has also done this amazing project. Thank you so much.
And please go to the website to view the exhibition, Ancestors Know Who We Are. Thank you all very much.
Before we go, my father, he would say to me, I'm learning Wapishana, Tidainan, which means see you later. Tidainan. So, Tidainan. Okay.
On-screen text, americanindian.si.edu/ancestors-know/ Ancestors Know Who We Are, National Museum of the American Indian, Smithsonian.